the start of fall begins only in about a week, 1 week and a half, whatever you want to say. It's September to November or the months for fall. So I wanted to talk about fall a little bit more before obviously fall begins, especially about the side of the active fall and winter ahead. We are expecting a pretty active fall, likely into winter for portions of the Midwest and obviously other portions of the United States as well. But there may be portions of the Midwest that is also drier than average. And so we talk about all that, I guess, all the details in this video. Look at all the model guidance, all the different, I guess, upper air patterns, and some of the drivers into what this fall may bring. First, taking a look at model data. This model, the European seasonal model for next month, has it being mostly active the further west you go. The plains may be active the further west into the western portions of the country, but further east looks pretty dry compared to normal on what this model wants to show. Taking a look at October it has a much wetter pattern overall. I mean, about half the country is actually in above average precipitation, and it's drier the further northwest you go, and maybe the further in the upper Midwest. But even then, it looks average to slightly above average for precipitation for most of the country. It really seems at this point for October time frame. Now, this could be overdone. It is just a model overall, and this is not my official forecast. But taking a look at November, it appears we will stay pretty active as well for the plains, some of the other Midwest states, and then further east along the East Coast. It does seem like the further east you go, the more active it will be this fall and winter. There's a lot of good agreement on that happening. It could be a little bit drier the further northeast you go in the Midwest, but either way, overall, looking at the fall months on this model, it appears it will be pretty active, especially for the plains areas, maybe portion of the Great Lakes, maybe below average. It all depends, I guess, if you get some northwest flow that can bring a drier pattern over there. But again, this is really active across much of the country according to this model. Taking a look at another model, the CFS model for this fall. The CFS isn't really that good of a model, to be honest with you, but this is, again, I'm just throwing out models for this fall, and then I will have my fall forecast on the precipitation side of things be released either this evening or tomorrow on Facebook and X, which are both Midwest weather as well. But either way, it looks like it appears that we will have a pretty active, pattern in the plains as again on this model, but it's very dry the further southeast you go. Honestly, it's almost opposite compared to the last model that we looked at for the eastern coastline. But it has most of the Midwest pretty active, and the further west you go, southwest portions of the country pretty active this fall as well. Again, don't really care for this model too much. It definitely has a really odd look overall. I do think it will be pretty active the further east you go. This definitely won't happen. I don't think, at least for this fall. No, this is the Kansas model, which can have its good days, but you know, I mean, it might not be the greatest either, to be honest with you. Again, but this might be a bit dramatic. This has a very active pattern along the east coast, southeast portions of the country. It's pretty active in the region of the Midwest overall, about slightly above average for precipitation, and that's pretty active again the further west you go. But this model has like 95% of the country getting above average precipitation. I don't really see that happening. There will be areas that will be above average for precipitation this fall, but probably not almost all the country. Well, but again, this does have still, I mean, does at least have an active pattern overall in the Midwest, in the East Coast, Southeast portion of the country, like most of the other models are showing. Now, this is a bit too dramatic, I guess. It shows it being, upwards of 10 inches above the average compared to normal for this fall, which would be pretty crazy. But for the north and the Midwest to go, it would only be about 1 or 3 inches above average, which makes a bit more sense for maybe for the southeast as well. I don't see a very, I guess I don't see an area that would be very active, like with flooding every couple weeks. I guess what this model is trying to show for these areas. Now this model has a pretty interesting look for the upper air pattern for this fall time. It does try to build later in the fall. It does try to build some troughing in the Gulf of Alaska as well. That can lead to a pretty active pattern, but also maybe a warmer pattern as well. But it can lead to a pretty active pattern across the country, especially areas of the upper Midwest. There's some ridging showing up, like it showed a couple weeks ago. Same thing, I guess. The model will continue to show some ridging this fall for portions of Canada and maybe push it down into northern areas of the country as well. This will bring a drier pattern, I guess, to these areas with a much more active pattern for the south to go, but I don't think the ridging will be this strong, I guess, for these areas. But we will also have a strengthening subtropical jet, which is a jet stream, I guess you want to say, that comes out of the southwest portions of the country. That typically brings some pretty large systems over the Midwest and the southeast portions of the country, and that's how you get some big winter storms, which I will talk about in videos coming up when we talk about the winter time frame a bit more. But this video is mostly just for fall as well. So, but there could be some similarities to fall and winter ahead. But again, if some troughing can develop over here, that could lead to a little bit more of a active pattern the further north you go as well. Probably not as cold of a pattern, I guess you would say, this fall from what this output would show. But again, this model does have a pretty warm bias overall. Now taking a look at a different model, the CAN-SIPS model for this fall. Again, just like it showed for the last map I showed, this model is very dramatic of an upper air pattern. It has ridging, across the entire Canada. A lot of the country pretty much seeing ridging at this point too. So again, this, you don't know what happened if this would even happen as well. That's pretty of a dumb output. Now, then look at this model for this fall. Very interesting look. It does actually have quite a bit of ridging showing up for the Alaska area. With troughing further west, this would definitely lead to even colder of a fall and active pattern overall, with a lot of troughing showing up the east too, further south. This has a bit of a El Nino look to it, which we are in an El Nino, pretty strong one already as well. But yeah, this would definitely bring a pretty active and cooler pattern across much of the country, aside from the northern areas of the Mountain West as well. So, in a very odd look on this model, but definitely not that great of an agreement looking at the upper air pattern for this fall time. I'm taking a look at the sea surface temperatures out west. You can see there's a pretty big blob of above average temperatures for sea surface temperatures, I guess you're gonna say, in the Gulf of Alaska area. When you have this warm blob over here, it can bring quite a bit of ridging over the Gulf of Alaska. And if this does happen, this typically brings a pretty cold pattern the further north you go in the fall and winter months. So, just another look, if you look at some of the regions and the oceans that can, I guess, differ from what models are trying to show. Now, see, looking down here, there's a pretty strong El Nino in place. But when you have this blob in the Gulf of Alaska, that can even overpower this as well, and bring cooler shots of air the further north you go, which can also bring a pretty active pattern. But either way, when you have very warm temperatures the further west, I guess you want to go anyways, this typically brings a pretty active pattern over the United States regardless, because you do get some pretty big systems that will ride this very warm blob of air. It will push on the west coast, and also have coast to coast systems this fall. Now that can be rain, snow, sea weather, all above. I'm not saying winter storms. I'm saying systems in general. And that is probably what is leading to this very active pattern that may unfold this fall as well. You're gonna have a pretty strong polar jet and also a pretty strong subtropical jet maybe kick in just in the mid to late fall, and that would lead to the very active pattern overall in much of the United States, especially for the south you go, obviously for the southwest you go. But again, when you have this very strong El Nino in place as well, one of the strongest on the record, you can say, it can bring some of the uncertainties alive, I guess, if you want to life, I guess, if you want to say, looking at this fall and winter's upper air pattern overall. But this is 2 years ago on this day. You can see the warm blob continues, I guess, over the Gulf of Alaska as well. And this is when we had more of a neutral to La Nina in place. So, when you have a warm blob in a La Nina, you can get, cold and active, well, colder air. But then if you have a warm blob as well in the El Nino, you should be getting an active pattern overall as well. That's typically what happens, because we had this El Nino this fall 2 years ago when we had that warm blob. It's slightly cooler than it is now, but when we had that El Nino again a few falls ago, we did have a pretty active fall with also a wetter pattern, with also a cooler pattern as well. So, definitely some things to, I guess, look at for when we release our actual forecast tonight or tomorrow.